Galatians chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. Let's focus on these verses together in this part of the study. Galatians 1 begins with Paul, an apostle, sent not from men, nor by man, but by Jesus Christ, and God the Father, who raised him from the dead, and all the brothers and sisters with me. That's verse 1. And in verse 1, we see that Paul identifies himself. This is a customary Greek letter opening, where the customary action is to identify who the author is first. He says he's Paul. He's identifying himself. But then right after that, he points out something else. He's an apostle. You see, in Galatians, throughout this letter, Paul's apostolic authority had been challenged by false teachers. False teachers are questioning whether or not Paul has the authority and the power to be communicating the message of the gospel. And so he has to identify himself as an apostle. He is set apart. Now, who is an apostle? An apostle was a special person, a special man, called for a special task at a special time, and especially appointed by God for the task. In other words, there were only so many apostles for a set period of time, in the sense that, in the way that the word the apostle is being used here. It's not talking about missionary per se, but a unique group of a select group of people who were entrusted to carry on the message of Jesus Christ with a full authority, appointed by God. Specific men for a special task, for a special time, and specially appointed by God. So the word apostle was not a general word which could be applied to every Christian like the word believer or saint or brother. It wasn't like that. It was a special term reserved only for a few that were especially chosen by Jesus Christ and appointed by God alone. And there can be no others apostolic accession apart from those people. The apostles had no successors, in the nature of the case that no one could succeed them. There was only that select group that had the authority to carry on the gospel. Now, Paul identifies himself here, as an apostle. Then he goes on saying he is not sent not from men, nor by man, but by Jesus Christ. Now, he's happy to identify himself as unique here, especially called out. And he's contrasting this and saying that he was not given this trust. He was not given this gospel from men. He didn't get his authority from mankind. He's contrasting that there, saying that Paul's apostolic appointment came not from men, but from God the Father, nor through a man, but through Jesus Christ. Now, again, differing views of authority here. So, what do we learn here? In this passage, we see that God's revelation is not from men. It's so easy to think that every person has the same power, the same intellectual capacity, and that, everybody's the same. And that if we all just work hard enough and get there, we can, or even have faith enough, we can all be the same. But that's not the case here with Paul. Paul's saying he was an apostle specially called out for this task. And he is saying that God's revelation to him was not something he made up. It wasn't something he thought up. It came not from men. And it didn't come from the church. Later on throughout the book of Galatians here, he's going to say nobody else gave it to him. It didn't come from the church people. It didn't come from the other group of people that were around Jesus at the time. No, it was given by God. God's revelation came not from men, and not from the church, but it came from Jesus Christ. God's revelation is from the apostles. And this is what the point that Paul's going to make here. God appointed him as an apostle. He was a specially called person to be entrusted with the authority of God and this message. He was an apostle who would derive his full authority from God, who had gave him this message. And that's the biblical view, that the apostles derived their authority from God through Christ. And apostolic authority is divine authority. It is neither human nor from the church. And because it is divine, we must submit to it. And that's what we can learn from verse 1. Now let's look at verse 2. Now, Paul, the second part of a Greek letter was to identify who the letter was addressed to. In the first part, Paul says that he was Paul, an apostle, that he was sent not from men, but he was appointed that the gospel that he was entrusted to came from Christ. Second part, in verse 2 of the greeting, to the churches in Galatia. And basically here, he's just identifying who the letter is to.